Hey guys, I'm going to start going over some math practice that we've been doing here. I'm going to just do, I got a request to do number 9 here from the perimeter practice test. Then I'm basically going to go over all of the questions on the third year practice. I'm just going to do them 10 at a time though, otherwise these videos will be like super long. So this perimeter one, it had an arc here of 158 degrees with a 4-foot radius, and then another arc here at 276 degrees with a 3'6" radius. First thing I did, I changed the radiuses to inches. So 4-foot radius is going to be 48 inches. A 3'6" radius is 42 inches. Next thing I did is I wanted to see how much this arc, like if you were to imagine these as two circles, I need to find out what portion this arc is of a circle. So if I take, it's that angle over 360. So 158 degrees divided by 360 is 0.43888 continuing. And then I did the same with this arc here. It's 276 degrees divided by 360 gives me 0.7666 continuing. Then I just found out what the stretch out would be of a 42-inch circle. So it's going to be, because it's a radius, I need to multiply it by 2 to come up with a diameter. So 42 times 2 is 84. And then multiply that by pi, which would give me the full circumference. But I don't want the full circumference, I only want this portion. So then I'm going to multiply it by the decimal that I found by doing 276 divided by 360. And it gives me an answer of 202.319. I rounded these off a little bit, so my final answer is going to be, when I did the actual answer sheet, I didn't round off my decimals. I just did it on here for the ease of seeing it. So that's one answer for this circle here. This circle here, it's going to be 48 times 2, which is 96, and then times pi to do the circumference, and then times the 0.3888, which gives me 132.316. And then I just, 366. And then I just add those two answers together. Which gives me 334 and 11/16, or 27 foot 10 and 11/16. If you don't remember how to convert this, if I just take the 11/16 and stick it at the end, I can take the 344 and divide that by 12. I'll just do it on my calculator here. So 334 divided by 12. That's going to give me 27.888, or sorry, 83333 continuing. So that's going to be my 27 feet. So then I can subtract 27 to leave me a decimal there. And then I'm going to multiply that by 12 to find out how many inches I have. 20 or times 12, and that's 10 inches. So 27 feet, 10 inches, and then I already had the 11/16 figured out. I'm going to go over that converting again in a couple other questions here. But that's going to be number 9 on the perimeter practice. Next, we're going to go into the third year questions. Question number 1 is some basically just Pythagoras Theorem. I didn't do them all because some of them are just the same process. So A... is just basically a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and then you square root it. So 7 squared plus 15 squared is c, and then the square root is going to be 16 and 9/16. So that's the final answer for that one. D is one where it was upside down, and it already gives us a hypotenuse. So that one's going to be c squared minus b squared is a squared, and then you square root it, and if you plug the numbers in there, it gives you 8 inches. E is probably the hardest one out of them. It's another one where you're going to go you're kind of reversing the Pythagorean equation. So c squared minus a squared is b squared and square rooted. So if I plug in those numbers, now this one is in feet and inches. So again, I changed them from feet and inches to inches. I could have also just done it as 22.5 feet and then 9 point whatever. Like if I go 4 divided by 12, it gives me a decimal of 0.333 continuing. So this would be 9.333 continuing. I did this, changed it to inches, and then I'm going to convert it to feet in the end. So anyway, 270 squared minus 112 squared, it gives me 245.6745815. So that's going to be 270 squared minus 112 squared gives me this answer. Now I can take that answer, divide it by 12, and that's going to give me the 20 point, all those numbers. So the 20 ends up being my feet. So I'm going to take that right away, put it down here as 20 feet. Then I'm going to minus 20 to isolate the decimal right there. And then I'm going to multiply it by 12 again to find out how many inches I have. So times 12 gives me 5.67458151. So that 5 is my inches, so I'm going to take that. So I'm going to subtract the 5 off of that to isolate the fractions of an inch now. So if I take that decimal, multiply it by 16ths, it gives me 10.7933. So if I round it up, because this is higher than 5, I'm going to round this up to 11/16. So 20 foot, 5 and 11/16. Okay, moving on to number 2. Number 2 is, we're getting into, the next 3 questions are basic trigonometry. So I wrote SOHCAHTOA up here. I like writing them this way because it shows that sine is going to be opposite divided by hypotenuse, cosine is going to be adjacent divided by hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite divided by adjacent. So looking at this first triangle here in question number 2, it's a 35-degree triangle. It has a 12-inch side, and it's looking for the hypotenuse. So we are dealing with the opposite of the angle and the hypotenuse, which is O and H. So O and H is going to be the sine function, so sine function. And then this one, it's going to be 12 divided by sine 35 gives you 20 and 5/16. If I do, it's kind of a trial and error is the best way to figure these out. Because some people ask, okay, when do you know when to subtract or divide versus like this next one here where I multiply it. If I was to do sine 35 times 12, actually I'll just show you on the calculator here. If I went sine 35 times 12, it gives me an answer that is not appropriate to that triangle. So I know I made a mistake if I did that, because this hypotenuse is never going to be way shorter than that side there. It's going to be the longest side out of that triangle. So that's where I'm just going to try a different way of doing it. So that's where I did the 12 divided by sine 35, and that's where it gave me the 20 and 15/16. I'm sure there's better ways of remembering which one to do, but just make sure that your answer looks appropriate to the triangle that you're trying to figure out. This next one's a pretty obvious one for that too. So this one here, we have a hypotenuse of 32 inches, we have 15 degrees, and we're looking for the adjacent side of that to where that angle is. So hypotenuse and adjacent is adjacent hypotenuse, so it's cosine function. So this one is going to be cosine 15 times 32 gives us 30 and 15/16. Now again, if I did it the other way, if I went 32 divided by cosine 15, I end up with 33.1288. So that number doesn't seem like it's super bad, except that the adjacent side would never be longer than the hypotenuse. So that's how I know that's not the right way to do that function. So this one is going to be cosine 15 multiplied by 32. Number 4 here, again, we're using opposite and hypotenuse because we have 14 and 28. This one here, we're looking for the angle. So because it's opposite and hypotenuse, it's going to be a sine function again. This one here, if you look at how the sine is written out, so it's opposite divided by hypotenuse. So that's what we're going to do first because we have these numbers. So opposite is 14 divided by 28, and then you're going to hit the equals button, and then second function sine, and that's going to tell us the angle. So this ends up being 30 degrees. So if you have both two numbers and you're looking for an angle, it's going to be the second function button. If you have an angle, you're going to be using those functions just as they are. All right, moving on. This one is number 5. I never wrote that on there. Number 5. Hopefully you guys remember this one. If you have a pair of pants like this, you have to draw a triangle in there like this. So, because that's going to give us this angle here, which is really, really important, because then we can actually calculate that arc length with that angle. So I just pulled this triangle out and put it down here. The hypotenuse of this triangle is this height here, from here all the way up to there. So 16 plus 16 is 32, because if I take that length and swing it down there, that's the hypotenuse of that triangle. It doesn't change dimension anywhere in there. So that's 32 on there. Then from this edge to the center here is the center of the pair of pants here. So this dimension here, 16 plus half of 18. So that's going to be 9 right there. So 16 and 9 is 25. So that gives me this length of the triangle right here. So from this angle that I'm looking for, that's the opposite. That's the hypotenuse. So that again is the sine function, right? Sine function. I have the numbers looking for the angle, so we're going to be using the second function sine. So opposite divided by hypotenuse, 25 divided by 32, second function sine gives me 51.4 something something something. I just shorten it up to give me the 51.4 degrees. So that's right here, 51.4 degrees. Now, again, if you were to imagine this as a full circle, I'm only looking for this little piece of pie. So that's going to be that angle over 360. So if I go 51.4 divided by 360, it gives me 0.142777, continuing. Now the radius of this circle is 32 inches, right? Because that's the hypotenuse from here to here is the very center of that circle. I want to know what the circumference is, so I have to multiply that by 2. Right here, 32 times 2 times pi times this decimal that I found here is going to give me 28.707. But that's just giving me this portion right here. I want to know what the total length is from here to here. So I have to multiply it by 2, which gives me 57 3/8. If you use the numbers I have right here, because I rounded them, or rounded them off pretty quickly, it actually ends up as 57 7/16. If you use the full length of the decimals, which is more accurate, you're going to end up with 57 3/8. I know I went over that kind of quickly, but seeing that this is recorded, you guys can stop it and play it back wherever you need to. Hopefully this just triggered your memory of doing this last year, because we did these quite a bit last year. All right, moving on to the volume of the little house here. Well, this one building had 3 different questions related to it. The first one, number 6, had to do with the length of the roof panels. I think the drawing on the on the test or the practice sheet had individual panels on there. So it's basically just looking for this length here, x, which would be the same length here. So that it's just going to be Pythagoras theorem. If I cut this in half and make a little triangle there, it's just going to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So half of 20 is going to be 10 feet. This is still 6'8", or 6.666 continuing. If I just went 8 divided by 12, it gives me that 0.666. So 6.666 squared plus 10 squared equals 12 feet, 1/4 inch. Again, I showed here, this is the actual, like if I did this equation, 6 squared plus 10 squared square rooted gives me 12.018500425 minus 12, because then I put the 12 feet up there, isolates that, multiplied by 12 gives me 0 inches, right? The answer is 0.0222. So because I have no whole number there, it's going to be no inches. And I'm going to just take that decimal and multiply it by 16ths to give me how many 16ths of an inch there are. So it ends up being 3.55 16ths. So I round that up to 4/16, and then I reduce that fraction down to 1/4 inch. So 12 feet, 1/4 inch. The area of the front, so they're just looking for the area of this whole section here. I'm going to start by the triangle section of the attic. So that's going to be height times base divided by 2. So I can go 6.666 continuing times 20 divided by 2, and that gives me 66.666 continuing. And then I'm going to do the length times width, or height times width on the bottom part here. Height times width, 10 times 20 is 200. Add those two together, gives me 266.666. And they asked for the closest whole foot, so it's 267 square feet is the area of that end. Total volume is me now taking those and just multiplying it by 40. So again, for the attic section, it's going to be height times base divided by 2 times length. So 6.666 continuing times 20 divided by 2 times 40 gives me 2,666.666 continuing. The bottom section here, height times width times length. So 10 times 20 times 40 is 8,000. Add the two together and you get 10,666.666 continuing. Round it up to the nearest whole foot and you end up with 10,667 cubic feet. All right, number 9, how many air changes? So I just made a drawing because this is just a written question, but if you draw out a simple drawing, it helps you see what's going on. If you remember, an air change is the entire volume of the room supplied and taken out in 1 hour, right? If there's 2 air changes in an hour, that means the entire volume of the room has been supplied and taken out twice. So what you have to do is find out what the volume of the room is, and that's just length times width times height. So 30 times 45 times 10, and then you're going to multiply that by 2 air changes. So 30 by 45 by 10 times 2 is 27,000 cubic feet per hour. And then they're asking how many CFM it would take. So there's 60 minutes in an hour. So I'm just going to divide it all by 60. So that gives me 450 cubic feet per minute. Number 10 here is how tall is going to be a tank if it's 2 foot by 2 foot and it holds 500 gallons. So this one here, we have to kind of reverse engineer it. So again, I drew a drawing here, 2 foot by 2 foot by a question mark height, 500 gallons. First thing I did is I changed these to inches because the conversion of gallons, right here, 1 gallon is 277 cubic inches. So I'm working with cubic inches, so I have to change these to inches. So first thing I'm going to do is change the gallons into cubic inches. So 500 times 277 gives me 138,500 cubic inches. Next thing I'm going to, because it's going to be length times width times height gives me the volume. So I'm just going to do the length times width part. So 2 foot or 24 inches times 24 inches gives me the 576 square inches. Now I'm just going to take this and divide it by that. So 138,500 divided by 576 gives me 240.4513889 inches, right? So, and now I'm going to convert that back to feet because this question initially dealt with feet. So I'm going to divide it by 12 to give me 20 feet. Take the 20 feet out, it leaves me with an isolated decimal. Multiply that by 12 to find out how many inches I have. The answer, when I take off the 12, or sorry, multiply it by 12, it ends up giving me 0.4513888. So that's 0 inches. So then I am just going to take what the leftover decimal, multiply by 16ths to find out how many 16ths of an inch I am. So multiplied by 16ths gives me 7.222, continuing, and then because that's less than 5, I'm going to round that down. So this is just going to stay 7/16. So 20 feet, 7/16 inches. All right, that's the 10th question. So that's going to be this section of the video. Stay tuned because I'm going to keep on going.